I never imagined that the night I signed an $800 million deal, the biggest moment of my professional life, would begin with someone shoving an empty wine glass into my hand and saying, "Hey waiter, make yourself useful." It still makes me laugh a little when I think about it. Not the humiliation itself, not the sting in my chest, but the absurdity. The universe has a strange way of showing you exactly where people truly stand. Sometimes all it takes is a suit without a tie, a quiet presence, and a room full of people who believe importance comes from how loudly you announce yourself. My name is Daniel Carter, though nobody seemed to remember it these days. Most people in the company only knew me from a framed photo on the founder's wall in the lobby, one taken years ago before stress carved lines into my forehead and before a boardroom full of polished strangers slowly pushed me out of my own creation. Technically, I was still the majority shareholder, but I had stepped away from the day-to-day years ago. Now, I only appeared in strategic decisions, big votes, and public announcements, a ghost with voting power. The merger party was held in the Grand Aurora Hotel in Manhattan, in one of those huge golden ballrooms filled with chandeliers and floral arrangements taller than small children. The kind of place where everything smells like polished marble and money. I walked in wearing a plain black suit, clean, perfectly tailored, but simple. No designer watch, no flashy shoes, no entourage. Just me, blending into the shadows the way I always preferred. Apparently, too much. As soon as I stepped inside, a young executive, maybe late 20s, hair slicked back, ego freshly inflated, snapped his fingers at me. "You, Cabernet, room temperature, and don't screw it up." He shoved the glass into my hand so aggressively that I had to tighten my grip not to drop it. I opened my mouth to correct him, but something inside me told me to stop. Not yet. Because there are moments when life gives you the rare chance to see who people truly are when they think you have nothing to offer them. And I wanted, no, needed, to see that tonight. So I simply nodded, the way a real server would. "Yes, sir." The moment I said it, I felt something shift in the room. A strange kind of invisibility wrapped itself around me. People stopped paying attention to my face. They stopped trying to make eye contact. I became part of the furniture. It was fascinating and a little heartbreaking. As I moved toward the catering table to refill the glass, I overheard two board members discussing the deal. "If all goes well tonight," one of them said, "I'm buying a house in the Hamptons. Beachfront, finally." "And your team?" the other asked with a smirk. "Oh, some cuts are unavoidable. But once the merger's done, Carter Tech doesn't need half the departments it has now. The new holding company will streamline everything. Leaner, more efficient." Leaner. Every time someone used that word, hundreds of families silently flinched somewhere in the world. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept walking. I handed the refilled glass back to the young executive. He took it without even looking at me, already laughing about something someone else said. That was my first snapshot of the night. The second came only minutes later. An older woman, maybe the event coordinator or someone equally stressed, waved her arms at me frantically. "Hello? You? Yes, you! The tray! Where's your tray? Guests in the back still don't have drinks." I picked up a tray of champagne flutes from a table and walked toward the group she pointed to. "Thank you," a young intern whispered as she grabbed a glass. She actually looked at me, smiled, treated me like a human being. That small gesture warmed a part of me that had been cold for a long time. "Rough night?" she asked softly, noticing the chaos around us. "You could say that." "Well, don't let them kill your mood," she said. "These events bring out the worst in people." I smiled at her gratitude. She had no idea I wasn't actually a waiter, and I had no reason to correct her. Her kindness wasn't based on status, it was simply who she was. And that mattered. As the minutes passed, I moved from group to group, overhearing whispers, jokes, promises, lies, and strategies. Being invisible gave me access to the raw, unfiltered version of everyone. The marketing director bragged loudly about how he planned to rewrite history and take credit for innovations he never touched. The CFO joked about pushing out older employees who didn't adapt fast enough. A senior engineer complained bitterly about the board, but still said thank you when I offered him a drink, his voice tired but respectful. The contrast was striking, but none of it prepared me for what happened next. Because 40 minutes into the evening I saw him, Raymond Mallory, the CEO installed by the board 2 years earlier, a man who loved luxury watches, power poses, and cameras more than actual leadership. He was standing near the signing table, surrounded by reporters and executives. His suit probably cost more than my first car. He didn't notice me at all. At least not yet. I decided to stay in character a little longer. I lifted the tray, pretending to offer champagne. A few people took glasses. Nobody paid attention to me. Then I heard Raymond's voice, loud, arrogant, dripping with entitlement. "Tonight is the night, gentlemen. After this deal, Carter Tech becomes the leading AI infrastructure company in the country. The board will get bonuses worth celebrating." Someone raised a glass. "And Carter, where is he tonight?" another executive asked. Raymond smirked. "Probably hiding somewhere, trying to feel relevant. I mean, he built something great, sure, but founders are like training wheels. Sooner or later, the real riders take over." The group laughed. I stood only a few feet away, tray still lifted, my pulse pounding in my ears. That was the moment my decision solidified. I wouldn't reveal myself yet, not until they showed me everything I needed to see. A few minutes later, while I was stepping away, Raymond snapped his fingers sharply, the same way the young executive had earlier. "Hey, you! Champagne refill!" I turned. He squinted at me with an expression of annoyance, as if my very existence inconvenienced him. "Move faster," he said. "We're paying for quality here." That was ironic, considering I was technically his boss. I walked to the bar, refilled the drink, and brought it back to him. Instead of taking the glass quietly, he leaned in and whispered, "Don't spill it. I won't tolerate incompetence tonight." I held the tray steady, my face expressionless, my heart colder than the champagne I was serving. "Of course, sir," I said. Because sometimes the best way to reveal a person's character is to give them the chance to display it freely. And Raymond was just getting started. But the real humiliation, the moment that would change everything, was still coming. Because in less than an hour, he would pour a full glass of red wine over my head, and the world he thought he ruled would collapse in front of him. As the ballroom grew louder, the energy shifted into something more chaotic. Too many egos in too little space. Deals being whispered, promises exchanged, fake laughter bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. I moved through the crowd, still holding the tray, still invisible. People brushed past me without apology, without even noticing. It was strange to feel both present and erased at the same time. At one point, the head caterer, a man in his 50s with tired eyes, looked at me with confusion. "Hey, I don't recognize you. You new?" I paused, just filling in. He shrugged. "Better you than nobody." "They're acting like they're royalty tonight." He walked away before I could say anything else. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Every minute made the disguise easier. Every minute revealed more of the truth. I moved toward the far corner of the room, where a small group of mid-level managers stood talking quietly. Their suits were modest. Their expressions carried stress, not arrogance. They were the kind of people who kept companies alive, not with flash, but with work. A woman among them noticed me first. "Thank you," she said as she grabbed a glass from the tray. "You guys are saving the event. The execs are intense tonight." I nodded. "Seems like it." She laughed softly. "You have no idea." Then she leaned in and whispered, "Half of us don't even know if we'll still have jobs after this merger. But they don't care. As long as their bonuses land, right?" There was no bitterness in her voice, just exhaustion. Another manager added, "I heard Raymond say restructuring would start on Monday. They'll deny it tonight, but the writing's on the wall." "Yeah," the woman said. "We'll work until midnight if we have to, but none of that matters in rooms like this." Her eyes drifted across the room toward the executives clinking glasses under the spotlight. She didn't know who I was, yet somehow she understood me more in that moment than the people cashing checks with my name on them. I wanted to tell her she'd be safe. I wanted to tell her she mattered. I wanted to tell her she was right, but that would break the experiment. Instead, I offered a small, empathetic nod and walked away. As I moved through the ballroom again, I noticed a janitor pushing a mop bucket across the marble floor. He glanced up at me. For a second, just a second, he looked like he knew exactly who I was. We made eye contact. He gave me a subtle nod, the kind that says, "I see you, not the suit." Not the status. You. I returned the nod. Everyone else in the room ignored him, stepped around him, pretended he wasn't there. Funny how the people closest to the ground often carried the most truth. The noise grew louder. Music started playing, soft jazz that somehow felt out of place among the inflated egos. The CEO, Raymond, strutted across the room like a peacock, greeting investors with exaggerated enthusiasm. At some point, he walked over to the bar, clearly irritated. He pointed at me. "You Pinot Noir this time, and make it full. Don't cheap out." I didn't say a word. I poured the wine, maintaining the same calm expression I had all night. He took the glass, tasted it, then said loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Finally, something this staff hasn't messed up yet." A group of executives laughed. I didn't. My silence made them uncomfortable. Not because they cared about my feelings, but because people like Raymond only felt powerful when others reacted, when others shrank. When others flinched. I gave him nothing, and my lack of reaction angered him more than any insult could have. A few minutes later, he walked toward the center of the ballroom, where the signing table was being prepared. He was giving orders, loudly, dramatically, making himself the center of attention. Photographers were positioning themselves near the stage. The media presence made him even more unbearable. Then, something unexpected happened. A woman in her 60s, elegant, composed, clearly someone important in the investor community, dropped her napkin and reached down to pick it up. I instinctively stepped closer to help, bending down at the same time she did. "Oh, thank you," she said. She looked at me carefully, studying my face. "Have we met?" she asked. Before I could answer, Raymond appeared behind her and said sharply, "He's just a waiter, Eleanor. Don't bother. They're trained to be helpful." The way he said "just a waiter," as if it were an insult, sparked something inside me, not anger, something deeper, a steady, cold clarity. Eleanor frowned. "There's no just in honest work, Raymond." He smirked. Of course. I didn't mean it like that, but he did, and everyone knew it." Eleanor looked at me again, her eyes soft with apology. Then she walked away. I exhaled quietly and returned to the bar. Minutes later, the first dramatic crack in Raymond's night appeared. A young man from the finance team approached him nervously. Sir, there's an issue with the valuation statement. The auditors need a final signature before—" Raymond raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Not now. Handle it yourself. I swear, if one more incompetent idiot interrupts me—" His sentence was cut short by the sound of a champagne flute shattering behind him. Someone had dropped it. A server rushed to pick it up. Raymond turned, furious. This staff is unbelievable. Did they hire amateurs tonight? The server apologized quickly. Raymond snatched the tray from his hands and shoved it at me instead. You take it. At least pretend you know what you're doing. I took the tray, calm, steady, focused. He didn't realize what he was doing. He didn't realize what was coming, because arrogance always blinds its host. I walked through the crowd again, offering champagne to guests. A few kind souls thanked me. Most didn't. I was beginning to recognize patterns. Who said please, who looked me in the eye, who saw me as human, who saw me as furniture. And I noticed something else. The deeper the insecurity, the harsher the behavior. The louder the ego, the emptier the soul. People spilled themselves out when they thought nobody important was watching. That was when the accident happened. A stressed executive bumped into me while waving his hands dramatically during a story, knocking the tray sideways. Glasses clinked and almost fell. I steadied the tray instantly. "Watch it," he snapped. "God, these servers." He walked away without looking back. I placed the tray down to catch my breath. It was then, right then, that Raymond began boiling over. He was arguing with a board member about a last-minute change in the contract. His face was flushed, jaw tight, eyes wild. He needed a target, a release valve, someone weaker than him. And in his eyes, that someone was me. He stormed toward the bar. I instinctively stepped aside, thinking he wanted access. But no. He grabbed a glass of wine, deep red, thick, expensive, and turned to face me with a cruel smirk. "You know," he said loud enough for several guests to hear, "when I ask for something done right, I expect it done right." I froze. Everyone around us went silent. He lifted the wine glass slowly. I knew what was coming. He knew what was coming, and he wanted the audience. Arrogance always needs a stage. "Maybe this will teach you to pay attention next time," he said, and then he tilted the glass and poured the red wine over my head. Warm liquid cascaded down my hair, soaked my shirt, dripped onto the polished marble floor. A few gasps, a few muffled laughs, a few phones recording. Raymond stepped back, satisfied. "Clean yourself up. You look ridiculous." I wiped my face with my hand, my heart steady, my mind silent. That was the exact moment I felt the universe turn, not in a mystical way, just cause and effect. The law of return, the truth revealing itself. Because the man who poured wine on me in front of everyone was seconds away from learning who I really was, and nothing in the world could have saved him from what came next. The wine felt warmer than it should have, like someone had poured humiliation straight down my spine. It dripped into my collar, ran behind my ears, stained the front of my shirt in an ugly, spreading red. For a second, the entire ballroom was frozen in that weird, suspended silence that happens when people don't know if they're supposed to laugh or pretend they didn't see anything. Then the murmurs started. A couple of guests chuckled under their breath. One man at the bar actually clapped once before stopping, realizing nobody joined him. A woman gasped and whispered, "That was too much." But she didn't say it loud enough for Raymond to hear. Raymond just smirked and handed the empty glass to another server. "Take this," he said, wiping his fingers on a linen napkin, "and someone clean up this mess." He turned his back to me like he was flicking away an insect. I stood there, soaked, my hair dripping onto the marble floor, my hands slightly trembling, not from shame, but from the sheer intensity of the moment. There are points in life where everything inside you wants to explode, scream, retaliate, burn it all down. But there's another kind of power, not loud, not chaotic, just a calm, steady line you refuse to cross. That was the line I was standing on. The head caterer rushed toward me with a horrified look on his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "He shouldn't have done that. Come on, let's get you a towel. You can change into a spare jacket in the back." I looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes weren't fake. He wasn't responsible for any of this, but he felt responsible anyway, because that's what decent people do. They feel other people's pain, even when they didn't cause it. "Thank you," I said quietly, "but I'm okay." "You're not okay," he insisted. "Look at you. He humiliated you in front of everyone." "I know," I said, "and that's exactly why I'm not cleaning it up." He frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" I took a slow breath and felt something click into place inside me. Tonight needed to show me who everyone really is. I think I've seen enough. He didn't understand, but he could tell I meant it. "Just, if anyone asks," I added, "you never saw me backstage. I was here the whole time." He hesitated, then nodded. "Whatever you say, man." As he walked away, the janitor appeared again, holding a simple stack of paper towels. "Here," he said softly, "at least wipe your face." "That stuff gets sticky." I couldn't help but smile. "Thank you." He looked around to make sure no one was listening. "You know, I've been cleaning floors in this city for 25 years. I've seen a lot of people in suits. The ones who yell the loudest usually fall the hardest." I dabbed my face with the towels, red smears staining the white paper. "You think so?" He nodded. "Life has a way of balancing the accounts. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow." But nobody gets away with how they treat people forever. His words landed in my chest in a way no corporate slogan ever did. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure. If someone disrespected you like that, in front of everyone, what would you do?" He thought about it for a second. "I'd remember two things," he said. "First, what a man does to others, he already did to himself on the inside. Second, the person getting stepped on always has more choices than they think." He gave me a small, knowing smile and walked away, mop bucket wheels squeaking lightly against the marble. I stood there for a moment, wine-soaked, heart steady, mind crystal clear. He was right. I had more choices than I thought. Across the room, the mood was shifting again. The incident was already fading from short attention spans. People were returning to their conversations, their networking, their posturing. Raymond was smiling widely again, posing for photos near the signing table, shaking hands with the acquiring company's executives. To them, what had just happened was a minor entertainment break. To me, it was a turning point. I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. I ran my hand through my hair, slicking it back, not to look presentable, but to avoid wine dripping into my eyes. My shirt was ruined, but I didn't care. In fact, it was perfect. Because I wanted them to see exactly what they had done. I started walking. Each step across that ballroom floor felt strangely slow and deliberate, like the universe was matching my pace. I moved past investors who didn't recognize me, past managers who had no idea the waiter they'd been talking to was actually the reason they had a job, past the intern who had been kind to me. She caught a glimpse of my shirt, eyes widening in sympathy, but I gave her a small nod that said, "It's okay." Watch. The closer I got to the signing table, the more whispers I heard behind me. Is that the same waiter Raymond poured wine on? Why is he walking toward the stage? What is he doing? Up on the small elevated platform, lawyers, board members, and top-level executives were seated around a glossy table. The contracts were neatly stacked. Expensive pens waited in a line like shiny weapons. A large screen behind them displayed the Carter-Tech logo, merging with the logo of Titanis Capital Holdings. The words, "Strategic Merger Ceremony," scrolled in a bold, elegant font. Raymond was in the center, of course. He lived for that position. The cameras loved him. Many of the employees did too, or at least they said they did when it was convenient. "Ladies and gentlemen," the event host announced into the microphone, "we are moments away from formalizing this historic merger valued at $800 million. This is a defining night for both companies." Applause erupted. I kept walking. The host continued, "I'd like to welcome Titanis Capital's leadership team and Carter-Tech's CEO, Mr. Raymond Mallory, to the center of the stage." More applause. Raymond stepped forward, waving like a politician. Cameras flashed. I reached the foot of the stage. A security guard stepped into my path, his expression firm. "Sir, staff needs to stay in the back. You can't be up here." I looked him in the eye and said calmly, "I'm not staff." He frowned. "Sir, I saw you serving drinks. Please step aside." I could have argued. I could have pulled rank. Instead, I simply said one sentence, quietly but clearly, "Call the chair of the board and ask him who I am." The security guard hesitated. Something in my voice must have struck him differently. He reached for his earpiece, speaking in a low tone. I've got someone at the front of the stage insisting he's not staff. Says we should check with the board chair about his identity." There was a pause, then another pause. The guard's eyes changed. "Yes, sir." "Okay. Understood." He stepped aside immediately, posture straightening. My apologies, Mr. Carter. I smiled faintly. Don't worry. You were doing your job. I walked past him and climbed onto the stage. A hush fell over the room. Raymond turned, annoyed at the interruption. Then he saw me, wine-stained, calm, walking toward the table with the contracts. "What is this?" he snapped. "Why is he up here? Can someone get him off the stage?" The board chair, Mr. Thompson, stood halfway up from his seat, his normally steady hands trembling slightly. "Raymond," he said quietly, "I think you should sit down." Raymond frowned. "What are you talking about? He's a waiter. He ruined the service tonight." Thompson shook his head. "He's not a waiter." Every eye in the room shifted between us. I reached for the microphone on the table and slowly lifted it. My shirt was still wet. Red streaks stained my collar. I could feel dozens of cameras pointed at me now, recording every detail. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "My name," I said calmly, "is Daniel Carter." Silence. Total silence. You could almost hear the oxygen leaving the room. Somewhere in the back, a glass clinked nervously against another. "I'm the founder of Carter Tech," I continued, "and the majority owner. My signature is the one that actually closes this $800 million deal you're all so excited about." I watched the realization spread across their faces like a slow, spreading fire. The intern's mouth fell open. The mid-level manager, who'd been worried about losing her job, stared at me in shock. Eleanor, the investor who had spoken up earlier, stared with her eyebrows raised, a faint smile appearing at the corner of her mouth, like a puzzle piece had just clicked into place. Raymond's face, on the other hand, shifted through several shades of red, none of them caused by wine. "Is this some kind of joke?" he demanded. "We already have the necessary approvals. The board voted." "The board voted," I agreed, "to recommend the merger. But the controlling shareholder still has to sign." "That would be me. You would know that if you paid attention to the paperwork you pretend to read." I didn't say it with malice. I said it like a doctor stating a diagnosis. The acquiring company's representative leaned toward his lawyer, whispering urgently. Panic flickered in his eyes. Raymond looked at Thompson, confused and furious. Tell him this is already settled." Thompson wouldn't meet his eyes. "He's right, Raymond. His approval is required." Raymond turned back to me, his voice shaking. You can't just show up here dressed like that and derail everything." I glanced down at my stained shirt. "Dressed like what?" I asked. "Like someone who serves others? Like someone who cleans up messes other people make? Like someone beneath you?" He swallowed hard. "You poured an $80 glass of wine on me," I said, "because you thought I was a nobody. You humiliated me in front of investors, employees, and partners." "You did that without a second thought, and I let you, because I needed to see who you really were when you thought no one important was watching." The whole room pulsed with tension. I could feel people holding their breaths. "If you're listening to this right now," I said, looking out into the crowd, "you might have your own story of being treated like you don't matter, like your work is invisible." If that's you, stay with me to the end of this, because what happens next is for you as much as it is for me. I let those words sit for a second. Then I turned back to the contracts. "Tonight," I continued, "I walked around this ballroom as a waiter. I listened to board members planning layoffs they called efficiency. I heard executives brag about how much they'll personally profit after this merger, while some of you out there aren't even sure if you'll have a job next month." I watched who said please and thank you, and who treated people like background props. I watched who looked others in the eyes and who only looked at name tags. I paused. I saw enough. Raymond took a step toward me, lower lip trembling slightly. "Daniel, we can discuss this privately. You're making a scene." I looked at him directly. "I didn't pour wine on anyone in front of cameras." A few people in the crowd couldn't hold back small, nervous laughs. They quickly silenced themselves, but the crack had already formed. "You want to talk about scenes?" I asked. "Let's talk about the story you've been telling about this company, about me, about the people who actually built this place." I placed the contract on the table and rested my hand on it. $800 million is a lot of money, I said, but the value of a company is more than what fits in an Excel sheet. It's how it treats people who can't do anything for it. It's what it does when nobody's watching. Tonight, I watched. The acquiring company's lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, are you saying you intend to withhold your signature?" I looked at him. "I'm saying," I replied, "that whether I sign or not depends on something more important than numbers." I turned back to the crowd, letting my gaze move slowly over faces I barely knew, but whose lives were about to be affected by whatever I decided in the next few minutes. "Right now," I said, voice steady, "every person in this room is thinking about themselves. The executives are thinking about their bonuses. Investors are thinking about returns. Employees are thinking about their jobs. Staff is thinking about whether they'll ever be treated with basic respect. You're all wondering what I'll do. Will I sign and let things go on exactly as planned? Or will I tear these papers up and burn the whole deal down?" I let their own thoughts echo inside the silence. Then I said, "But there's something all of you are forgetting." I placed my hand on my chest lightly. "Who I am doesn't depend on what you call me. Not founder, not majority shareholder, not waiter. Who I am is measured by the choices I make, especially when I've been disrespected, especially when I have the power to hurt back." I could feel my own words sinking into me as much as into them. This wasn't just for them. It was a reminder to myself. If you're still listening to this and you've been hurt, betrayed, or dismissed, you probably know that temptation to strike back, to get even, to put someone else on the floor because they once put you there. But the truth is, what you send out has a way of circling back, not as superstition, just as reality. Raymond shifted nervously. "So, what do you want, Daniel?" he asked. "You want more money? Your share will be massive. You can walk away richer than ever." I shook my head. "It's not about more money," I said. "It's about what this deal turns us into and whether I can live with that." I picked up one of the pens on the table, feeling its weight between my fingers. The entire ballroom leaned forward. If I sign this, I thought, I sign away control. I hand over thousands of lives to people who talk about cutting the fat like they're trimming a steak, not pushing real human beings into panic. I let someone like Raymond continue to wear a crown he never earned. On the other hand, if I refused, I would be walking away from a life-changing payout, not just for me, but for investors who believed in the company. I'd be starting a war with powerful people. Sometimes justice isn't a clean decision. It's a set of trade-offs. I rolled the pen between my fingers. Then I looked at Raymond and said, "You poured wine on the wrong nobody." His face drained of color. "What happens next?" I added. "Won't just change this contract." "It'll change who leads this company and who doesn't." And with that I put the pen down. The entire room held its breath, suspended on the edge of what I would choose. For a long moment I didn't move. The pen rested on the table inches from my hand, glinting under the chandelier lights. The whole ballroom felt like it was holding its breath, as if any small sound might tip the entire night in one direction or another. Cameras stayed fixed on me. Executives froze. Employees stared. Raymond, for the first time that evening, looked unsure of himself. I could feel hundreds of eyes trying to predict what I would do. They wanted certainty, some kind of anchor. But life rarely gives out certainty on command. Sometimes all it gives you is clarity. And tonight I had clarity. I lifted the microphone again. "I know what many of you think right now," I said quietly, "that I came up here to punish someone, to embarrass Raymond. To use my position to get revenge for what happened 20 minutes ago." A few people looked down at their shoes. And I won't lie. The thought crossed my mind. I'm still human. A ripple passed through the room. "But here's the truth," I continued. "What happened wasn't about wine, or embarrassment, or me. It was a mirror of what this culture has become. Who we reward, who we ignore, who we step on. I walked through this ballroom as someone invisible, and I got to see real faces. Not the LinkedIn versions, not the boardroom versions, the truth. I let my eyes drift across the crowd. I watched people celebrate profits while talking casually about cutting jobs. I watched others act polite only to cameras, but I also saw kindness, humanity, people who didn't know my name but treated me with respect anyway, and that matters more to me than any number printed on this contract. The mid-level manager who'd talked to me earlier looked emotional. The intern looked like she wanted to cry. Even Eleanor, the older investor, smiled with a quiet, knowing nod. "But the biggest truth of all," I said, "is that power is never about titles. It's about the impact of your choices. It's about the energy you bring into a room. It's about what you leave behind when you walk out." I paused deliberately. Tonight, someone poured wine on me because he believed I was beneath him. Everyone looked at Raymond. He shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. "But the real problem," I continued, "wasn't the wine. It was the belief that worth is something you measure by status, that respect is something you only give to those who can benefit you, that people only matter when they're on the 42nd floor, wearing tailored suits." I stepped closer to the contract. "But I don't believe that, and I won't let my company become a place that believes that," Raymond snapped. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You're dragging personal feelings into a business deal worth almost $1 billion. I turned to him calmly. "I'm bringing humanity into a business deal," I corrected, "which is something you should have done long before tonight." His face hardened. "You'll regret this." I gave him a small, almost gentle smile. "Maybe, but I'd regret signing it more." Gasps rippled through the room. Raymond stepped forward. "Daniel, you can't just—" I raised my hand. "Watch me." I picked up the contract and held it up for everyone to see. The pages looked cold and perfect, full of numbers and legal language designed to remove emotion from decisions that would impact thousands of lives. Then slowly, deliberately, I tore the contract in half. The sound of paper ripping echoed louder than any applause or gasp could have. Then I tore it again and again, until the pieces fell in a small pile on the table. The acquiring company executives stood in complete shock. One of their lawyers opened his mouth as if to protest, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing he could say that would change what had just happened. Raymond looked like a man whose entire world had just been yanked out from under him. "You're insane," he whispered. "Do you know what you've done?" "Yes," I said. "I've protected something more important than a payout." And then I turned to the board chair. "Effective immediately," I said. "I'm calling for an emergency vote to remove Raymond Mallory as CEO of Carter Tech due to misconduct, violation of ethics policy, hostile behavior toward staff, and failure to disclose restructuring plans to shareholders." Raymond's jaw dropped. "What? You can't—" Thompson stood up. "Actually, he can." The board members whispered among themselves. One by one, their expressions changed from confusion to resignation. They knew what they had to do. They had seen the incident. They had seen the footage, and the truth was undeniable. Within seconds, the board chair raised his hand. "All those in favor of the motion." Hands began lifting. 8, 9, 10 out of 12. Raymond's face turned pale. Thompson lowered his hand. "Motion passed. Raymond, please step down." The room erupted in murmurs, some shocked, some relieved, some secretly thrilled. Raymond stared at me with a mix of hatred and disbelief before storming off the stage, pushing past a photographer who nearly fell over. I stepped back to the microphone. "As for Carter Tech," I said with a steady voice, "it's time this company returns to its roots, innovation, integrity, and treating people like human beings, not cogs. I'm reinstating internal protections against unfair layoffs, restoring employee support programs, and opening communication channels that actually listen." A small wave of applause started from the back. Then it grew and grew until it filled the ballroom. "But I'm not going to do this alone," I said. "Tonight, I saw the people who actually care about this company, the ones who speak truth quietly, the ones who treat everyone with respect. Those are the people I want leading beside me." I pointed gently toward the mid-level manager. You said earlier you weren't sure how long you'd last in this company." "I'd like you to meet me on Monday morning to discuss a promotion." Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes. Then I turned toward the intern who'd spoken kindly to me. "And you treated the waiter better than the CEO did. I'd like to offer you a full-time position as soon as you're ready." She covered her mouth, nodding rapidly, overwhelmed. "And the janitor," I said aloud, scanning the room. "If you're still here, please find me later tonight." "I'd like to talk about raising the wages for all support staff. You keep this place together more than anyone realizes." Some people applauded. Others looked away, uncomfortable with how easily the truth exposed their behavior. Finally, I took a slow breath. "I want everyone in this room to remember something," I said softly. "We're always telling stories about ourselves, who we are, what we deserve, how far we've come. But the real story isn't written in boardrooms or contracts. It's written in how we treat people when we think they have nothing to offer us. That part of the story follows us everywhere. It shapes our future, and one day it turns back around." A long pause washed over the room. Tonight, I was invisible, and in that invisibility I found the truth, not about me, about all of us. Then, with a small smile, "And if you want to hear more stories like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel." Leave a comment telling me if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or misjudged. I read all of them. A soft laugh rippled through the crowd, the tension finally breaking. I put the microphone down. The deal was gone. The stain on my shirt remained. But something inside me felt cleaner than it had in years. As I stepped off the stage, Eleanor approached me first. "Well done," she said quietly. "You reminded them what leadership looks like." "Thank you," I said. "And thank you for treating me like a person before you knew who I was," she smiled. "It's easy to know who someone is. Just watch how they behave when nobody's watching." She walked away, her elegance calm and unwavering. Next came the janitor. "I wasn't sure if you meant what you said about wanting to talk," he said. "I meant every word." He nodded slowly. "Good, because change starts at the bottom. People forget that." "I won't," I said. Then I walked toward the exit, passing clusters of whispering guests and stunned executives. Some avoided eye contact, others offered small nods of respect. A few murmured apologies for how they had treated me earlier. Outside the ballroom, the hallway was quiet. I could finally breathe. I ran a hand through my damp hair, letting out a long breath. The air smelled like flowers and fresh linen, cleaner than the chaos inside. As I started down the corridor, someone called after me. "Daniel!" I turned. It was the intern. She stood there, nervous but earnest. "You didn't have to do all of that," she said. "Most people wouldn't." I shrugged lightly. "Most people haven't been invisible. Not recently, anyway." She smiled. "Well, I'm really glad you weren't." I nodded. "Me too." She took a step back. "Good night, Mr. Carter." "Good night." She disappeared back into the ballroom. I walked toward the elevator, my footsteps echoing softly in the quiet hallway. I felt the universe settling, like the ripple from a stone, finally reaching the edge of a pond. That night didn't just change the future of my company. It changed the future of who I was becoming. Because sometimes you need to lose your name to rediscover your identity. You need to step into the shadows to understand the power of light. You need to be mistaken for a nobody to remember that worth has nothing to do with titles. And sometimes someone has to pour wine on your head so the truth can finally wash over everyone else.